repetitively and consistently over a period of time. It is measured by determining the duration of activity or the number of repetition of specified movement before fatigue occurs. Now, for the evaluation, we have modified push-up test and fatigue assessment. And for intervention, we have work hardening and energy conservation. So for evaluation, we have modified push-up test.
So for the first non-standardized assessment tool, we have the modified push-up test. Please. For the modified push-up test, the patient must lie on the mat, hands shoulder width apart, bent knee position, and fully extend the arms. Then we lower the upper body until the elbows reach 90 degrees and return to the starting position with the arms fully extended. The feet are not to be held for the client, and the push-up action is to be continuous with no rest. We complete as many modified press-ups as available as possible and record the total number of modified press-ups. We count the maximum number of push-ups performed in good form without rest and stop the test when the client cannot maintain good form on 2 consecutive reps or strains forcibly and cannot continue.
So for the standardized assessment tool, so we have the fatigue self-assessment tool. So here, the color of the answers indicates the fatigue category and the actions required in accordance with the table on this tool. So if nasa 3 categories, which is the red, amber, and green. Next slide, please. So here it can be seen here ang red kay as soon as it is safe to do so, suspend any safety critical tasks that have been started and report now to your immediate supervisor or manager. Then amber kay before commencing the shift or task or before continuing work on a task that has been started, report to your immediate supervisor or manager and implement fatigue risk controls as required. And for the green, kay monitor for signs of fatigue and no additional risk controls required. So here, Naima, questions here. Do you believe you are fit to work? How do you feel right now? And did you sleep in the last 24 hours? And how would you rate the quality of that sleep compared with what you usually get on a similar shift patterns? And lastly is the signs of fatigue. Have you experienced any physical signs of fatigue immediately prior to or during this shift? Next slide, please.
So for the interventions, we have work hardening, which refers to the physical attributes of work tolerance, such as sitting tolerance, standing tolerance, and endurance for sustaining, lifting, or using heavy equipment. The the work hardening is a functional program which aims which aims to help patients regain their biomechanical, cardiovascular, metabolic, neuromuscular, and psychosocial functions in conjunction with their work tasks. Lastly, we have energy conservation, in which we'll be modifying the client's tasks to reduce the fatigue during activities. Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about the assessment first, Doc, for endurance. Um, do you think you'll be able to use that assessment tool for your child's endurance, muscular endurance?
Which one, Miss?
Atong last in yung assessment tool. Atong fatigue something.
I think we can, Miss, since this tool measures the fatigue, and fatigue is one factor you should consider in measuring your endurance.
Okay. How would you determine if the fatigue is caused by your cardiovascular endurance, like because of the heart and the pulmonary, or is it because of muscular endurance? Sa face, ang problem nila is muscular endurance, di ba? How would you know man if ang fatigue is caused by the cardiovascular or muscle endurance?
I think would differ siya, Miss, for cardiovascular kay there is a prominent increase in heart rate and heartbeat niya. For muscle kay the child is unable or is having difficulty in engaging in the task, miss.
So if ever na ay cardiovascular endurance problem ang child, for example, mag-shortness of breath siya, do you think the child will still be able to perform the task?
If you consider na there is rest, miss, kay the child could still continue after rest.
Is that for cardiovascular or muscular endurance?
For cardio, miss.
So for muscle endurance, we're saying na if ever mag-rest ang child for a while before mo continue, and then maka-continue siya, dili siya muscular endurance na problem.
What was ang sagit to, miss?
So you're saying na if ever mo rest ang child and then maka-perform siya again after sa young task, you're saying na dili na siya pwede na muscular endurance na problem?
Whether aside siya muscular, miss, it could go for both muscular and katong cardio.
Okay. So it is actually hard to use this this assessment tool to check for the muscular endurance using the biomechanical FOR. So how would you assess for the endurance?
In using a standardized assessment tool, miss, or pwede non-standard?
Pwede na non-standardized.
We could also use the koan, katong 6-minute walk test. Pwede ba, miss?
6-minute walk test, you can still actually use that for cardiovascular endurance, no? For muscular endurance lang.
Koan, miss, early activity scale for endurance test, miss.
You have that here sa inyong PowerPoint?
Miss?
Do you have that in your PowerPoint?
Wala.
Can you explain now?
Wait, the early activity scale for endurance, miss, kay it is kuan for kids diagnosed with cerebral palsy. However, it could also be used to other disabilities as well. So it is a feasible measure of endurance for physical activity in young children. So it is an 11-item self-report measure. Yeah, it is, and the scores will be compared by gross motor function classification systems, levels, age, and gender. So mo na ang is, miss.
Okay. In general, guys, what do you assess for when you want to assess the muscle endurance? What are you trying to look for? For example, you let the child do the activity. Now, how would you know if in your child na ay low endurance or poor muscle endurance?
If dali ra siya kapuyon, miss.
Okay. By dali siya kapuyon, meaning the duration of the activity? Sakto ba?
Oo.
Okay, so that's one. If your child is not able to finish the entire activity, for example, it could be because of the muscle endurance. So kapuyon siya. What else?
There is a signs of limping, miss, and the posture.
That could be for lower extremity endurance. But in general man, what do you have to look for aside from the duration of the activity na dili siya ka-finish? What else?
They will have a decreased strength in their muscle, miss.
Strength is different from endurance. Please don't get confused, Ana guys ha. Lahi ang strength sa endurance. When you talk about strength, you're talking about one, katong duration. What else?
Sad miss, ang amount of time nga iyang madu ang activity.
Okay, pwede. Amount of time na yung madu activity. So for example, yung pacing, like very slow yung pacing, kaya wala na siya endurance. That could be what else?
Miss, how long siya maka-engage sa activity, miss?
Okay, that's the duration. What else pa man?
Tolerance, miss.
What do you mean by tolerance?
If makaya niya like, wait lang. Sama ba? If makaya niya ang activity na gipado sa therapist, miss.
So like, same nagyapon sa duration na maka-finish yung sa activity. What else? For example, let's talk about one specific muscle group. For example, shoulder flexion na muscle group. How would you know if na siya poor muscle endurance diha napita?
The number of repetition of the action, miss.
Okay, the number of repetitions. So if ever dili, for example, the child do 10 repetitions and if dili niya kaya maabot og 10 repetitions, then you will see the most likely na siya problem with muscular endurance. Is that clear? So you have to check the number of repetitions, the duration of the activity, kung maka-finish ba siya, or how long niya kaya mo maintain in one position, how long niya kaya mo perform sa task. So that's what you mean by endurance, okay? I forgot to say this day ganina, no? You mentioned sa inyong intervention sa both range of motion and there is sa inyong, for range of motion, you mentioned katong changing the objects, changing the activity tools, mga ingon ana, and then now you mentioned na energy conservation and work hardening for your endurance. Are they under biomechanical FOR or rehab? Hmm? Okay, wala tayo time, no? Okay, it's actually rehab, no? Changing any part of the activity, giving assistive devices, modifying anything like giving of energy conservation techniques, those are under rehab FOR because you're changing the activity task, you're changing the occupation, or maybe you're changing the person. Biomechanical FOR is purely either remediating lost function or maintaining the current function. Remember that, guys, don't get confused. So if ever you will be using biomechanical FOR, you cannot change anything. What you can do is try to remediate the lost function. Is that clear? Don't get confused, Ana, guys, ha? The energy conservation, katong changing of activity tools, those are under rehab FOR. Not clear? Clear, guys?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay, who will share for the next group?